G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. We're back again for another episode of The Good, Bad and Ugly. Going to be reviewing round 14 of the 2023 AFL season. Now just the 6 games there was over the course of the weekend, so not really the most detailed round it was. Pretty mediocre games, some close games, some pretty scrappy games, but still plenty to talk about. If you're going to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. That'd be much appreciated. And let's get straight into it. So I was having to think with the concept they usually do of the 3 goods, the 3 bads and 3 uglies. I was just thinking, because there's only 6 games, I'm probably just better off reviewing each game itself and probably taking a look at the good, a bad and ugly from each sort of game. Probably would improve the, the style of the video, might make it a bit more entertaining and to cover a bit more across all spans of the games, which normally I am unable to. So I just thought we could do it this way. There was only 6 games, of course, as well. And yeah, over the course of the round, look, probably some mediocre games, wasn't really too many close games, but, this is what we're going to get with by round, some pretty, meh sort of games, scrappy sort of games. But yeah, first one, Thursday night, Port Adelaide and the Geelong Cats. Port getting it done by 38 points, convincing winners in the end, and I tipped Geelong in this one just because I felt the Cats, the key ins they had, there was Holmes, there was Duncan, and the big one, Paddy Dangerfield back into the side. And maybe I just felt that was probably a bit too good to be true with those key ins they'd come to Port Adelaide, the hardest venue in Australia at the moment in AFL footy, to knock off Port, who are just up and about. I just thought those key ins would do it, but probably as the rounds do go on, you'd see Dangerfield and Duncan, saw those older bodies try and now get into a little bit of form. But yeah, shame with Paddy Dangerfield though, going to hospital after the game with a punctured lung. But yeah, he couldn't really make the whole influence to get the result, as in that second half, Port Adelaide just went bang. They kicked 7 goals in a row. They were just on fire. They were one of the top teams in the competition for time in their forward half. They're a very good forward half side. They lock it in there extremely well. That first half was a little bit concerning. They really struggled to defend, struggled to move the ball, and they were terrible executing when going inside 50, but they made sure that was on the top of their game in that second half. They just went bang. Their ball movement again. This is just what I'm loving about Port Adelaide. They're strong in the midfield and their transition is as best as any team in the competition at the moment. The usual suspects, of course, Zach Butters 23 in a goal, Rosie 25. Houston had a superb game, honestly. Every disposal he took just looked beautiful. 𝐴𝐵𝗶𝗶𝗶 down forward again was a menace. He's just so good in those areas. Lycett I thought had an okay game. 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻 strong in defence. It's just another, whole team complete performance from Port Adelaide, and it was a terrific game from that second half onwards to pick up a massive result against the Cats side. You still have to respect given the personnel they do have, and yeah, with a few keys, the Cats first half was honestly really good. Their ball movement was looking quite good. They were winning some important clearances, and yeah, just inside 50, that was the difference in that first half for them. They were just so clean and executing perfectly. Hawkins was up there. Grind Myers had some great moments in that first half, but it just fell apart from that second half onwards. They struggled to win enough footy around the ball, struggled in the clearance, and their defence just fell apart. De 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻 and 𝐽𝐿 and Henry, like, they have their main their main back 6 really from the premiership from last year, but they just aren't coordinating too well at the moment. I think they are struggling defending at the moment the past few weeks, so that is probably their point of difference, which is really hurting them at the moment, and we saw that on that second half. And individual wise, I guess one to point the finger at is the likes of Tyson Stengel, Jeremy Cameron, really quiet as the game did wear on. And the thing with Cameron is he's usually like a 20 plus disposal sort of player. He's able to work both ends of the ground. We did see that a little bit, but just when it mattered inside 50, he went missing and he just really struggled. That happens with star players, obviously have off games, but I just thought Miles Bergman wore him really well. He's a really underrated defender at the moment, and yeah, Stengel a little bit quiet too. They just really struggled from that second half onwards, and yeah, it's a loss they'd want to forget, the Cutters. Then we move on to Friday night's game, the Brizzy Lions getting the job done over the Swans by a sort of a margin where it probably flattered the Swans a little bit by 16 points, given the Lions' third quarter dominance, kicking, I think, 3 goals out. They really should have won this game by probably 5 or 6 goals, but honestly, if you look at the Swans' perspective, that was probably their best overall performance in quite a while. Their past month or two, they've had some really poor games and played a really unsatisfying brand. And yeah, they've gotten the wins over North and Carlton, but still is at the expense of, North's problems with the interchange issues, of course, and, Carlton were pretty bad in front of goal too. But honestly, I think as a Swans fan myself, and probably I think a lot of Sydney fans would agree, probably their best performance in a while, but they still struggled as the game wore on keeping the ball in their forward half. But yeah, they were tough at it the intent and pressure was really there. They were really challenging Brisbane in that first term. Honestly, should have kicked a few more goals, but just couldn't execute. But yeah, the Brizzy Lions, you could just start to see as the game wore on, their class started to really seep through. Their ball movement, their midfield, they really got on top of the Swans in the contested game from that second half onwards. And, Zach Bailey was key to that. Just able to break away from stoppages, go forward, kick goals. He was probably the best on ground throughout that whole game. But then the end, it just was a really professional win from the Lions. Always good at home, and they always are hard to beat home at the Gabba. But yeah, for the Swans, I think it could be a little bit of a turning point. They've seen that probably as a pretty strong performance, but now they've got West Coast at their CG this week. This is probably, they start to maybe build off something, maybe start to construct a few wins in the road. Apart from Zach Bailey, I thought 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐾 in the ruck was superb. Lachie Neale was clean in the stoppage as well. Dunkley's just continued to be one of the best recruits in the AFL so far this year. And certainly was a key win to keep in touch with the top four for the Lions. Then we move on to the Sunday games. First one we had here was the Giants versus the Freo Dockers, and certainly was one of the more surprising games, not only just this round, but honestly this year. I could not believe what the Freo Dockers put up against the Giants, but we'll start with the Giants first. This is what happens when they bring their sort of Orange Tsunami style back. They looked deadly on Saturday afternoon. Their ball movement was the most exciting I've seen them play all year. Everything was clicking. Their transition was beautiful. They were really strong in the clearances. And in fact, I think halfway through the third, I almost just spat out me water when I was watching this game. The centre clearances, they were smacking them. I think it was like 12-1, but in the end it was 16-6. So strong in the midfield. Josh Kelly was superb. I think he had around 30 disposals and a goal, which is class, returning from injury. And of course, heading into this game, the Giants had a few key ends alongside Kelly. Also, the inclusion of Sam Taylor just to improve, a little bit of stability in their back line. You've had 𝐼𝐻𝐾 thrown back into the fence. I think Nick Haynes was playing a little bit of a higher role. They've now got some important personnel and some bodies getting back in their back half, the Giants. So I think that can really help them in the long run. But also Tom Green was really strong in the midfield. Kieran Briggs, he's turned into a bit of a surprise packet. He is a strong ruckman. And yeah, obviously it's at the expense of maybe no Shaun Dux, but he was just really dominating Jackson in those hitouts. He grabs out of the ruck, he boots it forward. Just the old-fashioned ruckman sort of type. But alongside that, there is so many underrated performances, I think, for the Giants in this game. Connor Idun is having a really underrated season so far, sort of playing as a bit of a general defender, really. Able to play on tall and small, a lockdown sort of type, and a really athletic player. Callum Brown, a bit of a swingman. The Irishman kicked some really cool goals. A complete performance from the Giants. Every part of the ground, they were awesome, and the ball movement was terrific. But it has to be said, it was at the expense of Freo's just lack of intent, lack of defensive transition. Absolutely awful in the contested game. I could not believe what I was watching. Obviously Caleb Serong, I always think's a bit of a shining light. He always just gets in there, always shows 100% left, right, and centre. But I just think this is what happens when Shaun Dux isn't playing. They just lose so much important structure in the midfield and the clearance game, because he's a big body. He's able to really, obviously one of the strongest hit-out ruckmen in the competition. He's able to direct traffic. He's able to, getting all those important nudges and clearances. But yeah, it's tough with Jackson doing it all himself. Of course, the stats sheet does look quite favourable, but yeah, they just need Darcy back in there. But Darcy in or Darcy out, it was just terrible from what I did witness. There was barely any pressure around the whole duration of the game. As I said as well, the defensive transition, absolutely terrible. It really just, honestly, I was just surprised. It was one of the worst games I think I've seen any team play this year. And with Dockers, they're coming off a pretty good run, but 2 losses in a row now, that does hurt their finals chances at the moment. So yeah, game they really wish they could have back. Then we move on to the Saturday night game. The Tigers getting a really scrappy and competitive win over the Saints by 20 points in the end. Second half onwards, of course, this game got just absolutely drenched. It was old-fashioned, pretty much wet weather footy. The Saints sort of playing the Tigers style, not really sort of being composed out of the back half. They too were just smacking it forward, trying to win those important contests at ground level and just playing the battle of territory, really. But every team does that in the wet weather footy. But yeah, the Tigers, just with that weather footy style, they're a very good team at doing it. And one player that is very good in the wet is Tim Taranto. This guy has been a superb recruit, probably rivaling 𝐓𝐡𝐞 at the moment is the best recruit in the competition. 38 disposals and a goal. Had a pretty good first half, but as soon as the rain came and as soon as the wet weather conditions were in full effect, he just took it with both hands. He's just so strong in there, and he's so clean as well with the ball. He's able to really make an impact in the wet weather and kicking that clutch check side goal too in the end to really seal it. Of course, it was Trent Cotchin's 300th game, and he did not disappoint. An absolute superstar play he has been across the whole course of his career. 3-time premiership player, and 29 and 2 goals. He's still really been able to make an impact sort of as playing a forward midfielder type, and he kicked some awesome goals as well in his Strength game. He was key in their win. Dusty Martin, 0 goals 3 but 35 disposals. He has generally been, the past month or so when the Tigers are now starting to play, starting to chalk up some wins. He is now starting to really elevate his game and make a huge impact in their side too. He was awesome, but yeah, the Saints just really struggled with ball movement. They weren't able to really set up well behind the fence when the weather really did came, and so this is what I was expecting. I felt if you're able to just play a chaos footy and able to really take the game on against the Saints defence, you usually can win the game, and the Saints can struggle with scoring too. And it was another superstar game from Shea Bolton too, with another 3-goal performance. He's just the difference maker these past few weeks for the Tigers as well. Probably the best on ground last week. Probably not the best on ground this week, but again, just every touch is impactful, clean play at ground level. They are Smokey's finals chance, the Tigers, as I've been saying on the channel the past few weeks, and now they're looking in a pretty good spot, sitting in 9th, only really a game or 2 points away outside the 8th. They're starting to really hit their execution well, and their brand is looking pretty sharp, and it's just, it's just good vibes, I think, at Tigerland at the moment under the new coach or interim coach of 𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐸𝐿𝐻. Everything's just clicking at the moment for the Tigers, and yeah, as for the Saints, just issues again, sort of, with ball movement and, when scoring as well. A little bit of issues there, but they just really couldn't contain the Tigers' chaos footy, which has been a little bit with the issues with their defensive efforts as well. When, when the going gets tough, when the repeated injuries really do come, and the fast ball movement is down their throats, they can really, I think, struggle with that a little bit. But yeah, they started the game off well, they just couldn't get it done. But yeah, the Tigers too strong. And another ugly game. This was on your Sunday afternoon. The Blues finally just getting that big, awesome win. They were due for one after going 6 losses in a row, and they'll definitely tag that with a big confident win over the Suns, and really was disappointing from Gold Coast. I did tip them just based off form, but I thought the Blues were due for a win, but you just can't trust the Suns, I think, interstate, and it's just always been their issue post-bye. They've never really been too good of a side, and it just really is disappointing. There was their chance to come down after a 2 good week span in Darwin, but they've just blown their finals chances a little bit with a huge loss against the Blues. They started the first term well, they locked the ball in their forward half, but they just struggled with ball movement. They struggled in the clearance, throwing Noah Anderson around the ground and everything. They were just under heavy duress, but the Blues ball movement was sharp. Harry Mackay and, of course, Kerner was strong in the air. They were just dominant aerial, especially when going inside 50. And sort of their old, from what we saw last year, their old style was back, just so strong in the clearance, so strong from stoppage. I think they kicked an insane amount of goals from centre clearance too. 19-7 centre clearances was pretty much the difference there, and the ball movement was looking strong. They have been, as of late, the Blues trying to play a little bit more of a more offensive and a more attacking style, but it just seemed to click across the span of today. Sam Doherty was brilliant in their back half. Adam Sider thought had a decent game. Cripps was at his best. I felt he was really strong, goal-kicking midfielder. He was able to slide home a few today. I honestly thought it probably was Tom De Koning's best game of the year as a ruck forward role he does play. Adam Cerra just continues to be a really underrated player, I think, for the Blues this year, just racking up the football. Walsh, sort of got on as the game went on, and Wiedering, I think, has been really strong so far this year too. But it really was the Blues' outside game that got the job done, I think. They dominated the uncontested possessions, really good when going around the ground and end to end, and the Suns just weren't able to combat that. Charlie Ballard, probably his worst game in a while. He was really well beaten by Kerno, still was a pretty decent matchup to watch. But alongside Ballard, just the Suns itself really struggled post that first term. They were unable to move the ball with any sort of gusto. They weren't able to really win any clearances. They struggled in that department. They've been a really good clearance side the past few weeks as well, the Suns. So really smashed in their own really good strength, I guess you can say. So yeah, in the end for the Suns, really disappointing loss down in Melbourne. Their big chance to try and push into the top 8, but unable to do so. Just didn't get enough hands on the footy. I did feel they didn't really control the outside game. They struggled in the inside game, and it just was a disaster after that first term. And the final game of the round saw the Bulldogs get it done over North Melbourne by 21 points. Was a pretty decent game to watch, I felt, throughout the duration of this game. It sort of was a little bit end-to-end. North started the game pretty well, but as I did say in my tipping video, just the Bulldogs class really did see him get the result here, and none more can be said by a few particular players. 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴 back from injury. He's been really good in the midfield, 34 and a goal. Bontempelli's probably best game of the year. He just turned it up in the second half, was just so strong in the coalface. And when you do look at the Bulldogs stat differentials the past month or so, they are actually quite strong. They just really struggle when going inside 50, and probably the first half the same sort of reoccurring issues were on display, but it was just, yeah, I think just with North Melbourne, they're going to have good patches, they're going to have bad patches. Just the Bulldogs midfield was far too strong, dominated them in that aspect, and 72 inside 50s to 36. They just controlled the ball so well. Got heaps amount of repeated entries. They did have issues, of course, with Liam Jones going down early, but Norton did move back, and I thought it wasn't too bad in that regard, but it just allowed 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴, I thought he was the star of the show, in his 100th game to slot home 6 goals, and he was huge. He was absolutely everywhere, taking some awesome marks, kicking some great check side goals, and this is the 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴 I do really love watching. He is just an athletic player. He's small, but he's bigger than what his size suggests. I do feel he plays big, and he does kick some awesome goals when he is up and about. And then when you move to North's perspective, it is of course another game drop, but it was a really competitive game, I do have to say. They have been playing some decent footy at Marvel. They've been really challenging a few opponents, and a few quite decent on paper opponents as well. They've just been on the unfortunate side of score lines, but you know, their midfield, I felt, tried their best. I thought they combated hard with the Bulldogs' strong clearance midfield, but yeah, they just really struggled to get the ball enough in their forward half from that second half onwards. Conceded a lot of goals in a row, and you know, just the young stars like Wardlaw had a bit of a quiet game, but this is just what's going to happen with a few of their younger players. But yeah, the struggles always continue with North, with probably their more veteran and experienced players didn't really offer enough and didn't really lift as the game went on. And with the Bulldogs' repeated entries, I just felt they really struggled defensively. And these are always issues I think North face from time to time. I still think they are lacking that really quality key sort of back. Yeah, they've brought in Logue, yeah, they've brought in 𝐴𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴, but I just think they need that just huge general all-Australian sort of quality player that really can play tall, play small, because they just struggled with containing 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴 and a few of their key forwards. I thought 𝘼𝐗ₗ was really good. He didn't kick a goal, but they were just so strong in the air, with them having 20 marks inside 50. So yeah, for North, another competitive game I felt contest-wise, but yeah, just the class of the Bulldogs got it done with some star performances for the Bulldogs around the ground. So everyone, there was another episode of The Good, Bad and Ugly for round 14 of the 2023 AFL season. Of course, again, just with the 6 games, I thought maybe we'd just do a game-by-game review, as we're a lot more able to cover more of the games and just the footy itself. But you make sure to leave a like and subscribe and comment down below, maybe if you prefer this format, if you want me to do just game by game instead of just doing the 3 goods, 3 bads, 3 uglies after the bye rounds. But yeah, if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Always do appreciate it, and yeah, always am appreciating the support, the subscribers that have been ticking in and coming in. So apart from that, everyone, that is the end of the video. If you want to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, as I always do say. And until next time, I will talk to you later. See you later, fellas.